King Shantanu. Shantanu was a king of the Kuru kingdom living in its capital city Hastinapur, the city of elephants on the banks of the Ganges. He was a descendant of the Bharata race and a member of the lunar dynasty of the Kshatriya Varna. Who on earth were they, Sandy mate? Errol asked. The lunar dynasty is a principal house of the Kshatriyas Varna. They are kings of a warrior caste mentioned in the ancient Indian texts. This particular dynasty was said to be descended from moon deities. The Kurukshetra war, in the epic Mahabharata, was fought between rival branches of the lunar dynasty. Krishna was believed to be born to the Yaduvamsh branch of the lunar dynasty, which was pretty much wiped out in the war documented in the Mahabharata. Shantanu was a great-grandfather of the Pandava and Kaurava clans, who eventually became the focus of the Mahabharata. He was the youngest son of King Pratapa of Hastinapur, said to be old by the time Shantanu was born. But Shantanu's story begins well before that. It's the result of two separate curses. The first curse was cast by sage Vasishtha. The Vasus were a group of deities associated with fire and light. In the Mahabharata they were known as the sons of Manu and a daughter of Daksha named Vasu. They were 8 among the 33 gods. The Vasus, led by Prithu, were out enjoying themselves in the forest when Prabhasa's wife spotted a divine cow which tickled her fancy. She persuaded Prabhasa to steal the cow with the help of Prithu and his other brothers. Unfortunately for them, the cow was owned by the sage Vasishtha. He cursed them to be born on earth as mortals but responded to their pleading by promising that 7 of them would be free of mortality within a year, but Prabhasa would have to go full term. Vasishtha allowed them to choose Ganga as their mother. The second curse that ties into our story occurred between yugas as the earth was being reformed. In his day, Mahabisha possessed many virtuous qualities. He was a king of the Ikshvaka dynasty, which were descendants of the sun. The sun was their god and originator. Together with the lunar dynasty they were the main lineages of the Kshatriya Varna. He was the firstborn of Himayat, the personification of the Himalayas, and sister to mother goddess Parvati. In this existence he was known as Mahabisha. Mahabisha had performed 1,000 Ashvamedha yagnas, or horse sacrifices, and 100 Rajasuya yagnas, the great sacrifice. This earned him an opportunity to attain heaven after his death on earth. While the world was being reformed for the next yuga, he received the opportunity to spend time with Brahma, the gods, and the devas including Ganga, in heaven. As Ganga was dancing, a wind blew through causing a revealing rustle of her clothes. Everyone averted their eyes except Mahabisha and Ganga. Brahma lost his temper and cursed Mahabisha and Ganga to be born as mortals. The worst possible fate. He softened the load for Ganga because he was more offended by Mahabisha. Ganga could return to heaven on one condition: you can only come back here after you break Mahabisha's heart. To set her plans in motion, Ganga needed to approach King Pratapa, who was sitting in the lotus position meditating. She took the form of a beautiful woman and approached the king by sitting on his right thigh. When the king asked her what she wanted, Ganga requested he become her husband. King Pratapa had to refuse because he had taken a vow not to lust for anyone, and besides Ganga had sat on his right thigh and everyone knew in those days that a man's right thigh was for his daughter and the left was for his wife. The king proposed she marry his son, which in this case was Shantanu, and Ganga agreed. She agreed because Shantanu was the reincarnation of Mahabisha, but she had one condition: never ask any questions about my actions. I guess she thought she could break his heart as either his mother or his wife. He couldn't yet become king because he had 2 older brothers. Devapi was the eldest son of King Pratapa of Hastinapura and oldest brother of Shantanu, who should have inherited the throne. Noble and well-liked, the prince was not allowed to succeed King Pratapa because he was affected with leprosy in the council of Brahmanas, and elderly citizens were opposed to this proposal. Devapi became an immortal sage, retiring to the forest for penance along with the sage Maru. The realm of Kuru suffered from severe drought for 12 years. Shantanu went to offer him the throne. Instead, Devapi conducted yajnas to produce rain. It said the sages remain alive until the end of Kali Yuga at a place called Kalapagrama. They will revive the Paurava dynasty in the next Satya Yuga. Perhaps they will visit Brahmaloka between yugas again. Sandy told us. Cheesy said, I'd best warn them it's a windy place. Balika was the second of the 3 sons of King Pratapa and his wife Sananda. One account says that with his eldest son Devapi set to inherit, Pratapa gifted a parcel of newly conquered land to his second son. The land was given the name Balika as a result. In another version, Balika deserts his family to join with his uncle who made him his heir and led to him becoming a king. Shantanu then became the crown prince and upon Pratapa's death became the king of Hastinapura, with Balika's blessing. Balika ruled as king for many years and was the oldest warrior to fight in the Kurukshetra war. He fought on the side of the Kaurava army but was slain by Bhima on the 14th day of the war when it continued after sunset. According to Yudhishthira, Balika's only wish was that there should be peace among the Bharatas. On his coronation, he gave Yudhishthira a chariot of pure gold. Sambhava Parva of the Mahabharata recounts how when he touched the old men of his kingdom, they felt a sensation of pleasure which restored their youth. Ganga soon gave birth to their first son. She abruptly drowned the infant. Shantanu could not ask the reason why she had done it, but it broke his heart. One by one, 7 sons were born, and 7 sons were drowned by Ganga. Why couldn't they stop her sooner? Errol asked and Cheesy said, she's a queen. When Ganga was about to drown the 8th son, Shantanu was so devastated he could not restrain himself further and confronted her. Ganga explained to him Brahma's curse on Mahabisha and her. Then she revealed that their 8 children were the 8 Vasus cursed by Vasishtha to be born on earth as mortal humans because they stole his cow. They partially pacified Vasishtha, who limited his curse and told them that they would be freed from the curse within a year of their birth as humans except Prabhasa. The Vasus had requested Ganga to be their mother. Prabhasa was cursed to live a long life and would not have a wife or any children. The eighth son was the reincarnated Prabhasa. He was left to remain alive by Ganga but imprisoned in his mortal form in which he later became known as Bhishma, the great warrior. Sandy stopped for a drink and let some of the experienced listeners fill in gaps for the newcomers to Sandy's form of the fireside chat. Cheesy asked Dick, "Does a great warrior have to remain single, Dick?" And he received back a flurry of visual daggers. Sandy saved him by jumping back in. The sage Vashishta also gave a boon to him, the child who would be known as Devavrata, which would make him virtuous, conversant with all the holy scriptures and an obedient son to his father. Ganga took him to train for the king's throne, which left Shantanu consumed by grief thinking about spending the rest of his life without Ganga. Shantanu adopted brahmacharya, a practice of celibacy and living within self that helped him rule his kingdom well. By merely adopting virtuous behavior, Shantanu was easily able to conquer the entire world without lifting any weapons. All the kings declared Shantanu as emperor, and he even gave up hunting to gain popularity with his subjects. One day, while walking along the banks of the Ganges, Shantanu saw that the river had become shallow, and that concerned him. While searching for the cause of the phenomenon, he came across a handsome young boy who had slowed the river's flow with his celestial weapon. The young boy knew he was his son. However, Shantanu didn't recognize him because he hadn't set eyes on him since his birth. This was his eighth son, Devavrata. The boy disappeared from his sight using his power of illusion. Perhaps he went to the same place Magda's pet beavers goes, I thought. Ganga appeared and revealed to him that the boy was actually his son Devavrata and that he had been taught the knowledge of the holy scriptures by the sage Vasishta and the art of warfare by Parshurama. She told Shantanu to take him to Hastinapura and name Devavrata as his heir. Shantanu was pained by his separation from Ganga but was overjoyed receiving such an accomplished son. He performed 7 Ashvamedha yagnas on the banks of the Yamuna with the help of Devavrata. For years later, Shantanu, while traveling near the banks of Yamuna, smelled a sweet scent coming from somewhere. While searching for the cause of the scent, he came across Satyavati from whom the scent was emanating. Satyavati was an adopted daughter of the chief of the fishermen of her village. Upon seeing her, Shantanu fell in love with her and desired to marry her. Satyavati was a queen of the Kuru, wife of King Shantanu of Hastinapura, and great-grandmother of the Pandava and Kaurava princes. She began life as the daughter of a fisherman chieftain, Dasharaja, but others say she was the daughter of the Chedi king Uparikara and a cursed Apsara, a celestial nymph, turned into a fish called Avrika. Satyavati was known as Matsyagandha, meaning, she who smells like fish. Satyavati met sage Parashara, who fathered her son Vyasa out of wedlock. The sage gave her a musky fragrance, earning her the name Gandhavati, or Fragrant One. That's how she made Shantanu fall in love with her. Her father insisted Satyavati's son be king. Shantanu could not comply because Devavrata was his heir. Devavrata gave his word and became Bhisma. Bhishma was known as Pitamaha, Gangaputra, and Devavrata. He was the supreme commander of the Kaurava forces during the Kurukshetra war, but in the story of King Shantanu, his father, he was Devavrata, born as the result of sage Vashista's curse on the 8 Vasus. In fact, he was Prabhasa. When he was taken into the forest by it was to train him for the king's throne and status. Sage Vashishta gave Devavrata a boon to be virtuous, conversant in scriptures, and an obedient son which would carry over to Bhishma. Shantanu made Devavrata his heir, but when Shantanu wanted to marry Satyavati, her father would only agree if Satyavati's son would inherit the throne. Devavrata stepped forward and told the chief he would renounce all his claims in favor of Satyavati's children. He renounced his birthright for his father's happiness and took a vow of lifelong celibacy, brahmacharya. His father, King Shantanu, blessed him to live as long as he wanted to. That's when the Celestials renamed him Bhishma, meaning one who has taken a terrible vow. Ah, there it is. Cheesy laughed. Satyavati bore Shantanu 2 sons, Chitrangada and Vichitravirya. Her life goal and ambition was to ensure their succession and inheritance of the fortune. A lesson can be learned here: one should know where greed takes over from ambition. Upon King Shantanu's death, Vichitravirya became the king of Hastinapura because Chitrangada had been killed by a Gandharv while Shantanu was still alive. Gandharv are those celestial beings, aren't they? The divine singers and dancers. Cheesy asked. Yes, that's them, Cheesy G. Sandy said. Chitrangada was a great warrior who developed pride and began disrespecting everyone. Bhishma tried to correct his brother but was ignored and rendered powerless due to his oath to serve the Kuru kings. He died in battle before he could marry and have sons. A Gandharv also named Chitrangada challenged him to a fight lasting 3 years. The Gandharv killed Chitrangada. Bhishma performed the funeral ritual. Chitrangada's young brother Vichitravirya became king with Bhishma and Satyavati ruling in his stead. Much of Vichitravirya's life occurred after the story of King Shantanu. He was the youngest son of Queen Satyavati and King Shantanu, and a grandfather of the Pandavas and the Kauravas. His brother Chitrangada had no sons. When he reached manhood, Bhishma married Vichitravirya to Ambika and Ambalika, daughters of the king of Kashi. Vichitravirya fell ill and could not be healed. He died childless. So how is he a grandfather? Queen Satyavati asked her eldest son, Sage Vyasa, born out of wedlock, to perform Niyoga with both the widows of her younger son Vichitravirya and one of their maids, Parishrami, who bare Dhritarashtra, Pandu, and Vidura, respectively. Niyoga permitted one spouse who had no child to procreate a child with another woman or a man. Follow the DNA, I guess. One should know where greed takes over from ambition.